fifth grade. We are beginning chapter 12, lesson 12-1, multiply by powers of 10. Remember, powers of 10 are numbers like this, like 10 to the third power, which equals, you have 3 zeros, 1,000, because that equals 10 times 10 times 10. Okay, so these are the kinds of numbers we're going to be multiplying. We're going to be using some decimals. So we're going to start with, let's say I have the number 1 2/10 times 10. If I multiply a decimal by 10, there's 1 0 in 10. So I'm going to take my decimal point and I'm going to move it to the right one place because there's 1 0. So then my decimal point would be there after the 2, which equals a whole number. So this equals 12 because I moved my decimal point one place to the right. So 1 2/10 times 10 is 12. Now let's take that same number, 1 2/10 times 100. Now, since I have 2 zeros, I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places to the right. So here's 1, 2. In this empty spot, I need to put a 0. So that equals 120. So you move your decimal point to the right by however many zeros there are. But if I have like 34 63/100 times 10 to the second, okay? Instead of counting my zeros, I look at my power. It's a 2. That means that I'm going to move my decimal point to the right 2 places. So if I take 34 63/100 and I move my decimal point to the right 2 places, it would be 1, 2. So it would be a whole number, 3,463, because the decimal point would be at the end. And we don't have to put the decimal point there if there's nothing after it. 3,463. It's just a whole number. So I'm going to do some examples here on page 195 to prepare you for 196, which is the page you're going to do. So here it just says find the product, which we know that means multiply. So 5 73/100 times 100. So I have 5 73/100 times 100. I have 2 zeros, so I'm going to move my decimal point to the right 2 places. So it's here, and I go 1, 2. So now that equals the whole number, 573. Okay, let's look at number 2. Number 2 says 246 thousandths times 10 to the third. Okay, I have 3 as my power, as my exponent, so I'm going to move my decimal point 3 places to the right, since the exponent is 3. 1, 2, 3. So that equals 246, because my decimal point moved to the end after the ones place. All right, number 3. Okay, actually I'm going to go back to number 3, because that's 300 instead of 100. So I'm going to go to number 4. Okay, I have 135 thousandths times 10. I have 1 0. So I'm going to move my decimal point one place, right there. So it's going to be 1 35/100, because I just moved it to the right 1 place. All right, let's look at number 5. 3 142 thousandths times 10 to the 5th. That means I need to move my decimal point 5 places to the right. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have to put zeros right here. So when I write that, 314,200. Because remember, 10 to the 5th, I have to have 5 zeros after that. So that means I multiplied by 100,000. Okay, let's look at number 7. Number 7 says 13 98/100 times 10,000. Okay, I have 4 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to move my decimal point 4 places to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have to put a 0 here. So this is going to equal 130,980. Okay, that's a comma, not a decimal point. 130,980. Okay, and then down at the bottom, it tells you to find the value of n. So we have 1 57/100 times n equals 157. Well, I need to figure out what power of 10 I multiplied. Okay, so I have 1 57/100, and here my decimal point is at the end, because in a whole number, remember the decimal point is always at the end. Okay, so 1, 2. To make that 157, I moved my decimal point 2 places. So that would be 100. So n equals 100, or I could call it 10 to the second power. Okay, and then number 11 says 5 60/100 times n equals 5,600. So I have to count how many places I moved my decimal point to get from 5 60/100 to 5,600. So here's 1, 2, okay, but then I need to move 2 more places so that I can put my 2 zeros, or I mean 1 more place, I need 1 more 0. So 5,600, I moved 3 places, 1, 2, 3. So n equals 1,000, because I have 3 zeros. Or I could say n equals 10 to the third power. Okay, and then number 12. N times 2 89,000 equals 208 9/10. So I need to see how many places I move my decimal point from here to get to this. So let me write the number again, 2 89,000. So I want my decimal point to be here after the 8. So 1, 2. I moved it 2 places. So n equals 100, or 10 to the second power. All right, let's go back to number 3 that I skipped. Number 3 says 6 1/10 times 300. Okay, we're going to break 300 apart and call it 3 times 100. 6 1/10 times, actually we'll call it 100 times 3. So first you're going to do this. 6 1/10 times 100. Then you'll multiply your answer times 3. So I have 6 1/10 times 100. 2 zeros, so 2 decimal places. 1, 2. So that's 610 times 3. So that's 1,830. Okay. And then let's do one more of those. Let's go to number 6. Number 6 says 624 thousandths times 500. So we're going to change that to 624 thousandths times 100 times 5. We're renaming 500 as 100 times 5. So I'll multiply 624 thousandths times 100, which means I need to move my decimal point 2 places to the right. 1, 2. So it'll be right here, 62 4/10. And then multiply that times 5. Okay, and just do this just like regular multiplication, and then we'll just have a decimal point with 1 digit after it. So 5 times 4 is 20, 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, 5 times 6 is 30, plus 1 is 31. And then we have 1 decimal place, so I'll put my decimal point right there. So it equals 312. Okay, so now I want you to turn to page 196, because this is the page that you're going to do. It's just like the problems we just did on 195. So you're going to do 1 through 10. Okay, so you just need to multiply. So I'll do a couple examples. Number 1 is 71 thousandths times 10 to the second. Okay, our exponent is 2, so you have to move your decimal point 2 places. So you have this 1, 2. So your decimal point goes after the 7. So that equals 7 1/10. That's what you'll put for number 1. Okay, and then let's do number 6. Number 6 is 202 thousandths times 2,000. Remember, we're going to break this up into 1,000 times 2. So we'll do 202 thousandths times 1,000 first. So 1, 2, 3. So that would be 202, and then times 2, which would be 404. Is your answer for number 6. Okay, and then on 7, 8, and 9, you need to figure out what you multiplied by. You can write it as a power, or you can write out the whole number. I'll do one of those. I'll do number 7. Number 7, we have 2 and 13 thousandths times n equals 20,130. Okay, so I need to get my decimal point from here all the way to a 0 being after the 3. So let's see. 2 and 13 thousandths. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I need to go one more place, 4, so that I can have a 0 here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So n equals 10 to the 4th power. All right, so you just need to do 1 through 10 on page 196. Remember, you move the decimal point to the right. The number of places, depending on how many zeros there are, count your zeros, or look at the exponent.